Okay, yeah, I was cleaning up my quilting space, and guess what? A whole ton of crumb pieces just fell right on me. Yeah, time to make a crumb block. Oh crap, I gotta clean all that up now. So this is my crumb bin here, and this bin tends to move around in my quilting space depending upon what I'm doing. Now, most of the time I have it next to my sewing machine here, and what I like to do with this is, all of these pieces are just basically cut-offs of some other block that I was working on. Or sometimes when I'm cutting down yardage, I'll have like a little bit of piece that is left over, so I just throw it in this crumb bin here. And there's no rhyme or reason, like there's some odd shapes. Well, this triangle was probably cut off or trimmed off when I did maybe a flying geese unit or some kind of a half square triangle. And they're just random pieces that I just throw in here. And a lot of times, oh, look at that, I trimmed off. I probably made a mistake on the block and trimmed it off incorrectly, so I just threw the piece back into the crumb bin. Once in a while, when I want to just sew on a project, or I don't want to work on a project, I should say, I'll just go through the crumb bin, dump it out, and just start sewing random pieces together. A lot of these pieces are probably cut off from yardage, or these are like the last sliver of a piece that when I was cutting maybe 2.5-inch squares or 5-inch squares or whatnot. So here's a pre-cut 2.5-inch square, and sometimes I need a 1.5-inch square. So I'll take the 2.5-inch square and then I'll cut it down to 1.5 inches. And when I do that, these pieces here, I don't throw them away. They go in the crumb bin. And I saved this for a rainy day, for when I just want to sew something, but I don't necessarily want to measure it or just want to just do some mindless sewing. So if you're into scrappy quilts, or if you want to work on a project and don't want to have to measure out or be exact, you just want to sew something, start at crumb bin. And on some rainy day when you just want to sew something but just don't want to, again, work on any project, jump out your crumb bin and just start sewing random pieces together. So to make this block, you will need 4 2.5 by 4.5 inch rectangles and 8 2.5 inch squares of a contrasting fabric print. We will be making flying geese units out of these, which will turn into the star legs. You will also need 4 2.5 inch squares, which will be the cornerstones of the block. And finally, you're going to need a ton of crumbs to sew a 4.5 inch crumb square. Now, various quilters have their methods of how to sew crumbs together. Here are 2 methods that I like to do. The first one is totally random. Just pick 2 pieces, and if you like it and they go together or they fit together, just sew it. There's no rhyme or reason, nor is there any logic to it. It's just totally random. Again, just pick 2 pieces, and if they fit and you like them together, sew it. The second method that I do is I'll take a long strip, maybe 1 inch or 1.5 inch, it doesn't really matter. Then I will just sew crumb pieces at random to that one strip. It's sort of like chain piecing these crumbs together. And when I'm done, I'll separate or I'll cut out those pieces. Then I'll take those pieces and sew them to other crumb pieces to make larger crumbs. I do recommend that you press your seams open when you create crumb blocks. This is because there's going to be a lot of seams, and that's going to be a ton of extra bulk. The idea here is that you are creating a unique fabric by sewing small pieces of other fabrics together. Eventually, you'll get so many pieces sewn together that you will have a large enough piece. Now, for this block, we're going to make a 4.5-inch square. So I will continue to sew crumbs together until I have a piece that is large enough to make a 4.5-inch square. So here I have 4 crumb pieces that I sewn together, and we're gonna actually cut these down to 4.5 inches. Now they look a little raggedy and the seams don't, or the edges don't line up, but once we cut these down, it'll look okay, trust me. So I have a 4.5-inch ruler here, and I'm just gonna place it right onto the piece. And what I'm looking for is, first of all, is there fabric on all 4 sides? You want to make sure that the piece is big enough so that you can cut it down to the size that you want. Now, in which I do see that yes, there's fabric here, there's a sliver of fabric there. Yep, so we're good. But what you also want to take a look at is there a seam next to the edge of the ruler? What I mean by that is, you don't necessarily want to do something like this bottom seam here. Oh, actually, let me do that. Okay. This edge right here, because this is a 1/4 inch away. So if I were to cut it here, all of these fabrics here is just going to get lost. So it wouldn't make sense for you to cut it right there on the 1/4 inch. So I'm going to adjust the ruler down to give it a little bit more so that these fabrics down here don't get lost in the 1/4 inch seam. Okay, so you want to just kind of spot check it around the edges to just make sure that the fabrics go a little bit more than that 1/4 inch. Otherwise, you'll just be, again, you're just going to lose the fabrics down here, and you're going to just add in more bulk for no reason. So okay, now this is where a rotating mat can come in handy, because you have to cut all 4 sides, and if you don't have a rotating mat, you can just do what I'm doing here and just take a smaller cutting mat and then just turn it. Try and keep the ruler in the same spot. And I'm just trimming it down. And once we got, and there's our 4.5-inch square. Now, with these pieces that I just cut off, if the piece is more than 1/2 inch or 1 inch wide, like this one for example, I will actually save this and put it back in my crumb bin for another day. Same thing with this piece here. Okay, I can still use this and put it in a different crumb block, so I'll put it back in the bin. Now, pieces like this, for example, this is not even worth it. Well, I could take this part off and then use this piece. In fact, that's what I'll do, but this, not worth it, trash it. Because at this point, even if you do try and sew this onto another block, it's just going to get lost in your seam allowance. So that goes in the trash. Okay, next one. Again, placing the ruler. And then, okay, so you see here, right here on this edge right there, what I notice is that I'm trying to follow the fabric edge here. And when I do that, notice that this piece of fabric right there lands right on the 1/4 inch, in which if I were to cut it there and sew this block onto something else, this green fabric is just going to get lost. Same thing with this orange triangle here. So I'm just going to shift it down a little bit because I do have room on this side to actually do that. And I'm going to cut it here. So I'm eliminating this green fabric, but at this point I don't care because with that same fabric is here and here. And then I'm going to shift it down a little bit because we want to make sure that we capture this white fabric down there. So here we go.
You only need one 4.5-inch crumb square to make the crumb star block. However, there is another project that I'm working on that requires multiple crumb squares, so I figure I make a few extra just so that you can see different examples. But again, you only need one 4.5-inch crumb square to make our crumb star block.
Now we're going to make our star points, and we're going to use the 2.5-inch by 4-inch rectangles as well as 2.5-inch squares here. And I'm going to actually mark the diagonal line on these 2.5-inch squares this time. You can sew or you can iron this diagonal line. You can mark it, or if you have a seam guide that actually has, that has like diagonal seam tape where the middle seam, or this line here in the middle seam, you can use that. I'm just gonna mark these quickly. And of course I'm using the back of the fabric here. Now this is a friction pen. You can use pencil, you can use whatever marking tool that you would like to. One of the things that I like about crumb blocks is just that it's mindless sewing. And sometimes you just want to create something, but you don't want to think about measurements, or you don't want to have to worry about your 1/4-inch seam. Crumb blocks is basically one of those things where you just want to sit at your sewing machine and just sew and sew and sew. It's a good block to do. And there's a lot of creative things that you can do with a crumb block. Basically you're just sewing a square, so you can make half square triangles out of them. You can do a pinwheel block, who knows? I mean, anything you can do with a square you can probably do with a crumb block. Just keep sewing, just keep sewing, 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 just keep sewing, just keep sewing, sewing, sewing. What will you do when you sew soon? What the hell did I just say? Oh well. Okay, so to make the flying geese block, I'm going to sew right on that line, or right on that diagonal seam. So we'll take this to the sewing machine. Line it up. Next one. Just keep sewing, sewing, sewing. Just keep sewing, just keep sewing, sewing, sewing. Just keep sewing, sewing, sewing. So when you line it up, you want to make sure that you're going from the corner to the center. And you want to be consistent on all of the blocks, or all of the pieces like that. If you mistakenly align it, well, at this point it's not going to matter. If you make a mistake and go from this corner to the center, as long as it's from the corner to the center, you're okay. But when you attach the second side, you want to make sure that you're also going from this corner to the center here. So, and again, we're sewing on the diagonal seam, not a 1/4 inch away. I cannot tell you how many times I've made this particular flying geese unit, and instead of sewing on the diagonal seam, I made the mistake of sewing a 1/4 inch away from it. Yeah, block didn't come out good. So I have all 4 of the units sewn on one side. Now we're gonna flip this back, but And we're going to cut all of this excess off here. But before we cut it, I just want to make sure that the point goes all the way out. What you don't want to have happen is you don't want it to come up short like that, because then your block will not come out or your star points won't be so pretty. So you just want to make sure that this point here goes all the way out to the edge, in which this one's good. So I can kind of press that down. Let's check this. Okay, so see how this one comes up short? Yeah, that's not good. So I'm gonna rip this one. Something happened on this particular block where it didn't do that. So I am gonna rip this one. Let's check the others while we're at it. That's pretty good. And last one. Okay, here's another one. I'm gonna rip that one apart. Rip it, rip it, rip it, rip it, rip it, rip it, rip it. I'm a very slow ripper. Rip it. Now pick it, pick it, pick it, pick it. The excess is off. Dust it, dust it, dust it, dust it. Now clean it, clean it, clean it, clean it. And again, let's try this again. I'm gonna line it up a little better this time. And let's sew. Yep, that looks much better. Okay, let's see how this one turned out. Okay, that's much better. That's good. And this should be better. Yep, that's much better. Oops. Yep, these are good. So what I'm gonna do now is we're gonna cut off the excess. Now that we know our seams are good. Now this does not have to be an exact 1/4 inch. In fact, I know a lot of people will just actually freehand cut it with the rotary cutter and just go like this. Okay, that's perfectly fine. Because you're cutting off into the seam allowance, this seam allowance does not have to be in particular an exact 1/4 inch. It's fine if it's a little off. Okay. Now, the other thing I do see people do is they just grab their scissors and they eyeball it, which is also perfectly fine. These, well, guess what? We're adding to our crumb bin collection, which, where's my bin? It's over there. Oh well, I'll just put it to the side for now. But again, you don't have to use your rotary cutter. You don't have to cut it exactly. I just find it's quicker for me to do it this way. But you can just use the scissors, use a ruler, use your rotary cutter, whatever works for you. So we're gonna press these back, and I'm pressing the seam allowance toward this corner. And for now, I'm just gonna finger press it. So we're gonna sew on the right side now. So we've done the left. Okay, so at this point, we have to be aware of the placement. Now, this is where placing the second block kind of matters, because we want to make sure that we go from the opposite corner to the center. If I were to sew it, or if I were to place this way and sew from this center to the corner, you're going to get a completely different looking block, in which it's not wrong. I mean, you can use this in another block, but we're making flying geese units here, so you want to go from this corner here to the center. Now, some people start from the bottom corner and go towards the center, and some people go from the center down to the bottom corner. It doesn't matter. Just do what's comfortable for you. How did we do here? Much better. Yep. Good. Now we trim. We got all 4 of them. So now I'm going to press these flying geese units really quickly. And when we come back, we're going to attach our 2.5 inch squares to both sides of these. So here's the flying geese unit, and eventually this is actually going to become the star point or the star legs. Now I pressed my seam allowances toward the triangles. You can, if you want to, you could actually press your seam allowance open, or you could actually press it towards the bigger triangle in the center. Choice is yours. I just pressed it out to the outer triangles because it was easier to do just that way. So now what we're gonna do is we will actually attach on 2 of the flying geese units. We're gonna attach a 2.5 inch square here, or on both sides. Okay. So let's sew this. You know, crumb quilting is, well, I almost want to say it's an acquired taste because some people love it, like me, and some people are not so much into the scrappy look, or they get a little bothered by the randomness of fabrics. So how many of you out there are crumb quilters or scrappy quilters, and what do you like about it? What do you not like about it? Personally, I like crumb quilting because it's kind of relaxing. You know, you just basically take 2 pieces of fabric and just sew it together. You don't have to worry about all your 1/4 inch seam. You don't have to be exact. I mean, it's crumbs and you're just basically sewing them together. Just make sure that they just don't fall apart. But how many of you out there have actually made a crumb quilt? Post a picture of your crumb quilt. Say that fast 10 times. Post a picture of your crumb quilt on the Treasure Heart Creations Facebook group and use the hashtag crumb quilt. Sewing, 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 don't mind the 1/4 inch seam. Nah, that didn't work. We got the 2.5 inch squares sewn to 2 of the flying geese units. And as you can see here, I pressed the seams out towards the 2.5 inch squares. So I'm just gonna finger press it for now. So now let me bring in the design board and we can actually start to lay this block out. So we'll start with our crumb block in the center. We'll put a flying geese unit there on top, flying geese unit there on each side, and flying geese unit at the bottom. And there's our star. Like me, the star. One thing you want to make sure is that you do sew your flying geese units on correctly, because there's been a number of times where I actually did it this way, in which this is fine too because you have a square and a square. But nope, I'm making a star. So just make sure that your point on the flying geese unit is toward that center block. Of course, if you want to make the other block, or if you want to lay it out, hey, it's your quilt, it's your block, you can do it that way. Okay, so we got these 2 rows, or the top and the bottom, sewn together. Let's get the center sewn. So I'm going to put that. Oh, quilting gods, please, please make this point come out. Please. Ooh, okay. It's not perfect, but I'll take it. Take a look at that. Not bad. Man, that side, well, not perfect, but I'll take it anyway. Now, since these have a lot of bulk, I am actually going to press these 2 seams here out. And, well, then I'm actually then gonna reverse my original idea and actually press the seams on the squares toward that center flying geese. This way, when I sew these 2 together, the seams will nest. Okay. So here's a tip for you. Now, when I sewed these 2.5 inch squares here, originally I had the seam allowances pressed towards the squares, but now that I see that the second row here, there's a lot of bulk, so I'm going to actually press these seams out towards the flying geese. Then on these two rows here with the star points, I'm actually gonna then reverse it, and now the seam allowance is actually gonna go towards that flying geese. And I'm doing this because when we start sewing the rows together, these seams will nest up towards each other. It's okay to do that. I mean, just because you pressed it one way or you're putting the seam allowance in a certain direction doesn't mean you can't change it when you realize that you need it to go the other way in order for the seams to nest. It is okay to actually change the direction of it. I just did. So we're gonna sew this together, and I'm gonna put a pin in it because I like it. So I'm gonna put a pin in it. If you like it, then you should have put a pin in it. If you like it, then you should have put a pin in it. So. Let's sew this together. Hopefully it'll work. Oh, I think I may have cut off that star point. Oh crap. Oh well, I'm not going to worry about it. Alright, let's first take a look at our block. Oh no, the point actually came out pretty good. Okay. Ooh, I like this. It's so pretty. Here's our block. Let's get this ironed and pressed out nicely, and we're done. And here is my finished crumb star block. Now the block should finish at about 6.5 inches, and give or take your 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now I like projects like this because in putting together the crumb square here, yeah, you don't have to think much. You just sew random fabrics together. Or if you want to organize it, you could, but hey, the choice is yours. When I don't want to work on a particular project, or when I just want to sew something but not just be so precise, well, I'll just sew some crumbs together, and before you know it, hey, you have a block. Now this is actually a great project to do if you need to come up with like a charity quilt, or if you need to come up with a donation. You might have the crumbs lying around, so you don't have to buy additional fabric. Just sew your crumbs together, maybe do some couple flying geese units, or put some border around it. You got a whole quilt top to donate. Well, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed making a crumb star with me. Until next time, go out and create something. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, hit the thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell for notifications on when I upload the next video. Put a comment down below saying what you liked, or maybe even what you didn't like. And join the Facebook discussion group at Treasure Heart Creations. You can post pictures of the blocks that you created, or just scroll through and gather inspiration from other Treasure Heart Creation Group members. And from time to time, there are giveaways exclusively for Treasure Heart Creation Group members. So use the link in the description box below to sign up. If you're on Instagram, post pictures of the blocks that you're working on using the hashtag THC5252. Well, that's it for now. Now go out and create something.